Staff Sergeant Nora Phillips peered through her high-powered rifle scope at a scene that chilled her to the core. Half a dozen hostile sharpshooters were stationed on various rooftops surrounding the deserted manufacturing plant, all with their sights fixed on General Patricia Walsh, the officer who had rescued Nora from the harsh streets of El Paso and transformed her into the military's most lethal marksman. Walsh sat bound to a chair in the facility's exposed central yard while opposition commanders readied themselves to televise her death as a triumph for their cause. Through her communications device, Nora listened to the adversary's final countdown. 1 minute remained before the American general would be killed. Walsh had instilled in her that during warfare there are no opportunities for do-overs, only initial strikes that either preserve lives or extinguish them. Now Nora faced 60 ticking seconds to validate that teaching, half a dozen enemies to neutralize, and a single mentor to rescue before the woman who had faith in her became another war statistic. However, to comprehend why Staff Sergeant Nora Phillips would gamble everything to rescue General Walsh, one must understand how wayward adolescent from El Paso's troubled districts became among the United States Army's most formidable snipers. Nora Elena Phillips was raised in one of El Paso's most dangerous communities, where her Mexican mother Maria labored through consecutive shifts in a hospital dining facility while her Irish father Sean consumed his Vietnam War military pension through alcohol. The Phillips household occupied a small two-bedroom flat that carried the scent of cleaning chemicals from Maria's work attire and liquor from Sean's nightly habits. Before reaching 17, Nora had mastered navigating gang-controlled areas, evading narcotics distributors, and crucially, remaining unnoticed in a community where visibility invited danger. Her journey toward military service began during her final secondary school year when recruitment officers visited El Paso High School. While fellow students bypassed the information stations, Nora halted at the Army's display and gazed at promotional material depicting soldiers in battle equipment, not from attraction to martial existence but because she identified something in their expressions matching what confronted her in her bathroom reflection each dawn, the appearance of individuals who had mastered endurance in environments where survival wasn't assured. A recruiter, an impeccably dressed sergeant whose identification read Rodriguez, inquired whether she was interested in serving her nation. Nora responded with frank honesty that she desired escape from El Paso and questioned whether the military would facilitate that. Rodriguez grinned, recognizing the unvarnished truthfulness of someone depleted of alternatives. The armed forces would assist with that objective and considerably more, he explained, questioning whether she possessed sufficient resilience for what would be demanded in exchange. Nora met his gaze directly, asserting she had demonstrated toughness facing circumstances he wouldn't comprehend since age 12. Half a year afterward, Nora departed for Fort Benning for initial military preparation, transporting her complete possessions in one canvas bag and abandoning a household that scarcely registered her exit. Fundamental preparation exposed what her training supervisors termed innate combat capabilities. She could traverse intricate landscapes as if inherently familiar with them, comprehend weaponry mechanisms with intuition beyond instruction, and critically, maintain absolute composure under duress that caused fellow trainees to panic. Her shooting performance consistently shattered facility benchmarks. Throughout specialized individual instruction, she achieved expert qualification on every armament system the military provided. Yet what genuinely distinguished her transcended mere precision. Her capacity to render seemingly unachievable shots appear ordinary, to discover solutions absent from any handbook, and to complete operations other soldiers couldn't fathom. Her operational designation Ghost originated during her initial Afghanistan assignment in 2018 when she eliminated a priority enemy from a location hostile forces never identified. The shot was executed from 1,200 meters through a dust storm at an enemy visible for under 3 seconds. Following the operation, her unit commander documented that Phillips maneuvered through that assignment like a phantom, objective eliminated with no evidence remaining as though she had never existed. The moniker persisted and within months, specialized warfare teams throughout Afghanistan knew about the marksman who could materialize anywhere, neutralize any objective, and vanish without traces of her presence. Yet Nora's existence transformed permanently during her subsequent Syria deployment in 2019 when assigned to furnish elevated surveillance for a combined task force mission anticipated to be standard intelligence collection. The operation failed from the opening moment with her surface team ambushed in a sophisticated trap leaving them immobilized and suffering losses. That marked her first encounter with Brigadier General Patricia Walsh. When the Syria mission deteriorated into disorder, Walsh was the commanding officer who decided to save Nora's complete unit. Rather than adhering to Pentagon procedures requiring waiting for reinforcement and aerial assistance, Walsh personally sanctioned immediate evacuation under hostile fire utilizing resources not formally under her authority. She commanded over radio communications with unwavering certainty to extract them immediately, disregarding regulatory constraints because those soldiers were perishing and required rescue. The extraction succeeded, yet Walsh confronted formal investigation for surpassing her command boundaries and breaching operational guidelines. During proceedings, she was questioned regarding her willingness to jeopardize her profession to rescue a unit beyond her accountability. She replied simply that someone needed to act, acknowledging that occasionally proper action conflicts with authorized action, and when confronting that situation, one selects what's proper and embraces the ramifications. Nora attended that hearing, summoned as a witness to characterize the tactical circumstances. She observed Walsh facing potential military tribunal with identical calm assurance displayed during the evacuation, never faltering in her conviction that preserving soldiers superseded regulatory compliance. The accusations were ultimately dismissed when the unit Nora served with, all 12 soldiers, testified they survived due to Walsh's determination. However, the general's preparedness to sacrifice her profession for individuals she barely recognized profoundly affected the young marksman from El Paso. Following the proceedings, Walsh personally approached Nora, quietly acknowledging she had reviewed her service documentation. Her marksmanship performance was remarkable, yet more significantly, her judgment under duress represented exactly what the military required. Walsh was nominating her for sophisticated sniper instruction at Fort Benning, succeeded by placement with Joint Special Operations Command. Nora stared incredulously, questioning why Walsh would undertake this for someone she didn't know. Walsh smiled faintly, explaining she possessed sufficient knowledge, understanding Nora originated from nothing and constructed herself into something meaningful, performed remarkably under pressure, and that the military needed individuals comprehending that occasionally regulations exist for violation when lives hang in the balance. When Nora questioned her adequacy for specialized warfare, Walsh responded with absolute certainty that she wasn't sufficient yet but would become so because Walsh would guarantee she received every opportunity to develop into the soldier Walsh believed she could become. That exchange transformed everything for Nora. For her first experience, someone in command had examined her capabilities rather than her history, recognized her abilities instead of her constraints, and invested in her prospects rather than dismissing her. Sophisticated sniper instruction at Fort Benning challenged Nora beyond every limitation she perceived. The program eliminated 90% of participants, yet she not merely endured but flourished. Her trainers observed she confronted seemingly impossible shots with serene confidence characteristic of someone never instructed that certain achievements were supposed to be challenging. During one preparation drill, she eliminated 5 objectives from 5 distinct locations in under 2 minutes, traversing a simulated urban setting like vapor. Her concluding shot was executed while mobile at an objective 800 meters distant under conditions rendering accurate fire supposedly impossible. Her instructor demanded afterward how she accomplished that shot. She responded that she had been executing difficult shots since 18 years of age, acknowledging this marked the first occasion someone furnished proper equipment. Following graduation, Walsh personally guaranteed Nora's assignment to the 75th Ranger Regiment, where she rapidly earned recognition as the variety of marksmen from whom legends emerge. Her verified eliminations encompassed some of modern military history's most challenging neutralizations. Yet what genuinely distinguished her was her capability to function entirely autonomously, materializing behind hostile boundaries to eliminate priority objectives conventional forces couldn't access. Throughout the subsequent 3 years, Walsh continued guiding Nora's profession, advocating for sophisticated instruction, guaranteeing she obtained assignments developing her capabilities, and crucially, shielding her from military administration occasionally viewing exceptional soldiers as disruptions to established hierarchy. Walsh explained during routine consultations that the armed forces tend to suppress individuals thinking differently, and her responsibility involved preventing them from suppressing Nora before demonstrating her capabilities. Nora had never encountered anything resembling Walsh's support. Having matured with parents barely acknowledging her existence, the general's investment in her advancement felt like discovering family she never realized existed. However, their connection was challenged during Nora's third Iraq deployment in 2021 when assigned to eliminate a priority objective intelligence documentation had tracked for months. The target was a terrorist commander coordinating assaults against American personnel, his elimination deemed essential for regional security. The operation proceeded flawlessly until Nora discovered the facility contained civilian captives, women and children who would perish if she executed the shot from her intended location. Adhering to rigid mission specifications would have necessitated accepting civilian losses to eliminate the objective. Nora decided something violating every tactical guideline. She relocated to a more hazardous position, enabling her to eliminate the objective without endangering civilian existence. The shot succeeded, yet her unsanctioned movement jeopardized her withdrawal path and nearly resulted in her apprehension. Upon returning to headquarters, she faced immediate corrective measures for disobeying mission specifications. The proceedings were severe, with officers challenging her assessment, her dedication, and her suitability for specialized warfare. That's when General Walsh intervened again, testifying on Nora's behalf that this soldier accomplished the mission goal while preventing civilian losses, demonstrating precisely the variety of ethical bravery and tactical creativity the military should cultivate rather than discipline. When the presiding officer indicated she breached direct commands, Walsh replied resolutely that she enhanced the mission result while maintaining American principles, asserting that occasionally the finest soldiers comprehend that command compliance differs from national service. The corrective action was diminished to formal censure, yet more significantly, Walsh's advocacy during proceedings strengthened a connection between them transcending typical military associations. Nora understood the general wasn't merely her guide but represented the nearest thing to family she had experienced. This brings us to that elevated position in Fallujah, Iraq during March 2022, where Nora discovered herself observing through her scope at the woman who had revolutionized her existence, now restrained to a chair and encircled by half a dozen hostile sharpshooters preparing her execution. The operation leading to Walsh's seizure had been standard intelligence collection, examining reports of a fresh terrorist organization functioning from a deserted industrial facility. Walsh had demanded personally supervising the mission, believing direct command attendance would guarantee optimal synchronization between numerous specialized warfare teams. Yet the intelligence was erroneous. Rather than a modest terrorist organization, the facility accommodated a significant operational headquarters managed by Khalil al-Rashid, among the Middle East's most pursued terrorist commanders. Al-Rashid had been orchestrating this snare for months, utilizing fabricated intelligence to entice prominent American officers into a meticulously arranged elimination zone. When Walsh's transport column neared the facility, they proceeded directly into a sophisticated ambush comprising over 40 well-equipped combatants with military-grade armaments and synchronized defensive arrangements. The general's protection detail fought courageously, yet they were outnumbered and outmatched from the assault's commencement. Walsh herself was seized when she declined abandoning wounded soldiers during the engagement. Rather than evacuating when opportunity existed, she maintained position to synchronize her protection team's withdrawal, only accepting seizure after guaranteeing every other American soldier was securely extracted. Now 12 hours afterward, al-Rashid was readying to televise Walsh's execution as propaganda triumph, illustrating that even American generals were susceptible to his organization's capabilities. 6 professional marksmen had been stationed to guarantee any liberation effort would produce the general's immediate death. What al-Rashid didn't realize was that Staff Sergeant Nora Phillips had been monitoring the circumstances since Walsh's transport column ceased communication. Utilizing capabilities no handbook instructed and equipment most soldiers never encountered, she had penetrated the facility boundary and established elevated surveillance on the execution location. Through her scope, Nora could observe every particular of the tactical circumstances. The 6 hostile sharpshooters were stationed on different elevated structures surrounding the manufacturing plant yard, each with unobstructed sight lines to Walsh's location. They were professional shooters with military specification weapons, synchronized communication, and overlapping observation fields designed to prevent precisely what Nora was about to undertake. The distance to the nearest objective was 400 meters. The most distant was nearly 800 meters away. Wind velocity was fluctuating at 12 miles per hour from the northwest. The declining afternoon sunlight generated thermal disturbances that would influence projectile trajectory. And she possessed precisely 60 seconds before the execution commenced. Under typical conditions, neutralizing 6 trained sharpshooters in different locations before any could respond would be deemed impossible. Yet Nora Phillips had never been especially troubled by what others deemed impossible. She had invested the preceding 4 years preparing for precisely this variety of situation under Walsh's instruction. The general had challenged her to cultivate capabilities extending beyond conventional military preparation to become the variety of soldier who could accomplish operations seeming impossible because they were the sole individuals positioned between achievement and defeat. Walsh had instructed her during preparation that occasionally she would confront circumstances where adhering to conventional approaches meant virtuous people perish, and when that occurs, one must be ready to undertake achievements nobody believes achievable. Now, observing Walsh facing execution while 6 hostile sharpshooters prepared to obstruct any liberation effort, Nora understood this was precisely the moment Walsh had been preparing her for. She commenced by examining each objective through her scope, computing wind displacement, distance, and elevation for 6 distinct shots. Her rifle was a custom-constructed system with competition-grade ammunition she had assembled personally, guaranteeing flawless uniformity for each projectile. Target 1, Northwest Elevated Structure, 427 meters, moderate wind vulnerability. Target 2, Northeast Elevated Structure, 523 meters, partial wind protection. Target 3, Eastern Location, 634 meters, raised platform. Target 4, Southeastern Elevated Structure, 710 meters, maximum distance. Target 5, Southern Location, 445 meters, thermal disturbance. Target 6, Western Elevated Structure, 388 meters, nearest objective. Nora's strategy was elementary in theory yet nearly unachievable in implementation. Neutralize all 6 objectives sequentially before any could respond, discharge, or notify the others. She would need to accommodate for different distances, wind circumstances, and elevation modifications while sustaining flawless precision under maximum duress. The countdown in her communications device reached 30 seconds. Nora regulated her respiration, sensing her pulse decelerate to the cadence that had rendered her legendary in specialized warfare circles. Her initial objective was the nearest, the Western Elevated Structure location presenting the most immediate danger to Walsh. 25 seconds remained. Through her scope, she could observe the hostile sharpshooter modifying his location, preparing for the execution shot. He was a professional, systematic in his movements, assured in his capability to obstruct any liberation effort. He was unaware that death was already monitoring him from 388 meters away. 20 seconds remained as her crosshairs stabilized on the objective's head with mechanical exactness. She released half her respiration and retained it, sensing the flawless motionlessness preceding every shot that mattered. 15 seconds remained as her finger commenced implementing pressure to the mechanism with the progressive consistency separating expert marksmen from everyone else. The rifle felt like an extension of her determination, flawlessly balanced and absolutely dependable. 10 seconds remained. The initial shot resonated across the distance like thunder. At 388 meters, the projectile required under half a second to contact its objective. The hostile sharpshooter's head jerked backward and he collapsed behind his location without producing sound. 5 objectives remaining, 55 seconds until reinforcement sharpshooters would investigate. Nora transitioned to Target 2 on the Northeast Elevated Structure 523 meters distant. The hostile sharpshooter was concentrated on Walsh's location and hadn't registered his colleague's neutralization. Through her scope, she could observe him executing final modifications to his rifle. Her subsequent shot eliminated him before he could finalize his targeting sequence. 4 objectives remaining, 50 seconds. Target 3 was the most demanding yet, 634 meters distant on a raised platform with thermal disturbance influencing projectile trajectory. Nora compensated for heat shimmer and wind displacement, stabilizing her crosshairs on an objective barely distinguishable in her scope. The third shot was flawless, center mass impact that dropped the hostile sharpshooter instantly. 3 objectives remaining, 45 seconds. The Southeastern Elevated Structure contained Target 4 at 710 meters, maximum distance for her rifle mechanism under these circumstances. This was the variety of shot separating legendary sharpshooters from merely outstanding ones. Wind velocity, elevation differential, thermal impacts, and objective movement all required computation in real time. Nora's 4th shot traversed nearly 3/4 of a mile before discovering its objective, another flawless impact. 2 objectives remaining, 40 seconds. Target 5 on the southern location was 445 meters distant yet partially obscured behind concrete obstacles. Nora could observe only his head and shoulders through her scope. The tolerance for deviation was calculated in inches. Her 5th shot was surgically exact, eliminating the objective through the confined gap in his protection. 1 objective remaining, 35 seconds. The concluding hostile sharpshooter was on the eastern location, 634 meters distant. As Nora transitioned to target him, she understood he had registered that communication with his teammates had ceased. He was searching around attempting to comprehend why nobody was acknowledging his radio transmissions. Through her scope, she could observe bewilderment on his features as he commenced comprehending that something had proceeded catastrophically incorrect. He initiated turning his rifle away from Walsh's location, searching for the danger that had eliminated his complete team. Yet he was 30 seconds excessively delayed. Nora's sixth shot terminated his search permanently. Complete elapsed duration, 28 seconds. 6 objectives, 6 shots, 6 eliminations. The manufacturing plant yard became silent except for Walsh's voice transmitting across the distance, inquiring whoever just accomplished that to identify themselves, stating this is General Walsh and the area is secured for withdrawal. Nora activated her radio with a voice transmitting 4 years of appreciation, regard, and affection for the woman who had revolutionized her existence. Identifying herself as Ghost arriving to transport her home. 20 minutes afterward, Nora reached Walsh's location and severed her restraints with hands that were flawlessly steady despite having just completed the most challenging shooting sequence in modern military history. Walsh questioned how she eliminated 6 sharpshooters in under 30 seconds. Nora responded that Walsh had instructed her that when lives are threatened, impossible is merely another term for something nobody's attempted sufficiently to accomplish. Walsh smiled, the initial authentic smile Nora had witnessed from her in months, acknowledging she had instructed her numerous things yet never instructed her to execute shots like that. Nora replied that Walsh didn't instruct the shooting itself but instructed why the shooting matters, teaching her that occasionally one individual must accomplish things seeming impossible because virtuous people require protection.
Target in the courtyard.
As they proceeded toward the withdrawal location, Walsh questioned something bothering her since the liberation, how Nora even knew her location since this was a classified mission with minimal personnel notification. Nora regarded the woman who had extracted her from El Paso streets and transformed her into something she never thought achievable, explaining she had been monitoring Walsh's operations for 4 years, not formally but personally, because someone needs to oversee the individual who oversees everyone else. Walsh indicated that wasn't part of her professional responsibilities. Nora responded respectfully that Walsh made it part of her responsibilities the day she determined to invest in a youth from El Paso who had no justification wearing that uniform, explaining that Walsh protected her when protection was needed, and now she protects Walsh.
Take the shot.
Walsh remained quiet momentarily, comprehending for the initial occasion the depth of dedication she had earned through 4 years of guidance and assistance. She remarked that when initially recommending Nora for sophisticated instruction, she believed she was cultivating a sharpshooter, not understanding she was creating a guardian spirit. 3 weeks afterward, Staff Sergeant Nora Phillips obtained the Silver Star for remarkable heroism in combat against hostile forces. The recognition documented her courage in action during warfare missions in Iraq, acknowledging her exceptional marksmanship and tactical excellence resulted in the triumphant liberation of a commanding military officer and the neutralization of a substantial terrorist danger. Yet the recognition that mattered most to Nora originated from General Walsh personally, a simple unit recognition reading for illustrating that the finest soldiers are those comprehending that certain things are more significant than command compliance. During the recognition ceremony, Walsh approached Nora privately, questioning what prompted her decision to gamble everything to rescue her when she could have adhered to guidelines, awaited reinforcement, accomplished everything by established procedures. Nora contemplated the question earnestly, explaining that 4 years prior, Walsh instructed her that occasionally proper action conflicts with sanctioned action, and when that occurs, one selects what's proper and embraces the ramifications. Walsh indicated she was discussing rescuing soldiers under hostile fire, not breaching military guidelines to liberate commanding officers. Nora responded that Walsh rescued her when she was merely another youth from El Paso's troubled districts with no prospects and no optimism, that Walsh perceived something in her she didn't perceive in herself and invested in her when nobody else would accept the gamble. Nora paused, attempting to discover terminology for sentiments that didn't translate readily into military vocabulary, explaining that Walsh didn't merely instruct her to be a superior soldier but demonstrated what it signifies to be a superior individual, instructing her that dedication flows reciprocally, that command means protecting individuals who accompany you, and that occasionally the most significant operation is one nobody commands you to finalize. Walsh smiled, identifying her own terminology and principles reflected in the young soldier she had guided, questioning what Nora planned to accomplish when this assignment concluded. Nora responded whatever Walsh recommends since she had never misdirected her yet. Walsh was recommending her for the Sergeant Major Academy, succeeded by placement to Special Operations Command as an educator, explaining the military needs individuals who can instruct the subsequent generation that command compliance differs from national service, questioning whether Nora was attempting to transform into her. Walsh laughed, clarifying she was attempting to assist Nora in becoming the variant of herself Walsh perceived 4 years prior when she was merely a youth with capability, explaining the military needs commanders comprehending that certain things matter more than regulations, who will gamble everything to shield individuals who trust them. 6 months afterward, Nora obtained directives to report to the United States Army Sergeant Major Academy at Fort Bliss, Texas, under 50 miles from the El Paso community where she matured believing she possessed no prospects. On her concluding night before departing Iraq, she occupied her quarters composing correspondence to General Walsh, attempting to articulate what the preceding 4 years had signified to her. She documented that Walsh extracted her from the streets and furnished purpose, demonstrated that command isn't regarding rank or jurisdiction but concerns attending to individuals who trust you with their existence, instructed that the most significant conflicts are frequently fought by individuals who never obtain acknowledgement, and that occasionally the greatest triumph is transporting everyone home alive. She acknowledged she would never be capable of reimbursing what Walsh accomplished for her yet could guarantee that every soldier she instructs, every operation she finalizes, every occasion she selects to accomplish what's proper instead of what's effortless, she'll be honoring the teachings Walsh imparted, explaining that Walsh didn't merely transform her into a superior soldier but into someone comprehending that with exceptional capability comes exceptional accountability and that occasionally one individual genuinely can produce a distinction if they're prepared to execute the shot when it matters most. The account of what transpired that day in Fallujah became legendary within specialized warfare circles, yet Nora never pursued acknowledgement for her conduct. She continued serving with identical quiet professionalism defining her complete military profession, accepting the most hazardous assignments and consistently demonstrating that occasionally the impossible is merely another term for necessary, because for Staff Sergeant Nora Phillips, shielding individuals who couldn't shield themselves wasn't merely her operation but her method of honoring the woman who had demonstrated that one individual's confidence in another could transform everything. When General Walsh threw her profession on the boundary to rescue a unit beyond her accountability, she illustrated that occasionally command means gambling everything to shield individuals who trust you. When Nora eliminated 6 hostile sharpshooters to rescue the general who had guided her, she validated that dedication and appreciation can motivate ordinary individuals to accomplish remarkable achievements. Ultimately, the most significant teaching wasn't regarding marksmanship or approaches or military planning but concerned comprehending that individuals who elevate us merit our protection reciprocally, and that occasionally the greatest distinction is being the individual others can depend on when everything else fails. For Nora Phillips, that day in Fallujah wasn't merely regarding executing 6 impossible shots under maximum duress but concerned validating that the confidence General Walsh had positioned in a troubled youth from El Paso had been justified, and that occasionally the optimal method to honor your guides is to become someone worthy of their investment. Certain obligations can never be completely reimbursed yet can be honored through a lifetime of dedication to the principles and standards your guides represent. For Nora, rescuing General Walsh wasn't merely a liberation operation but the finalization of a circle commencing 4 years earlier when Walsh determined to invest in her capability, and occasionally that's what genuine command resembles. Creating individuals who will gamble everything to shield the principles you instructed them, who will undertake the impossible because you demonstrated it was necessary, and who will honor your confidence in them by becoming the variety of individual who never disappoints virtuous people. In a reality where dedication is frequently merely terminology, Nora Phillips validated that for certain individuals, dedication is an existence method that can motivate 6 flawless shots under impossible duress, because occasionally that's what's required to shield the individuals who transformed you into who you are.